developing countries, and that group is growing. So the question is, how can we do it in South Africa? How can we do it in Cambodia? How can we do it in Turkey, in Vietnam, Mongolia, and the like? And how can we then also do it from a global perspective and look at global challenges? So this is the question that lies ahead. My colleague, Kevin, who's on the other side working on the global network for global innovation, has done a lot of this work. And he's going to set the scene a little bit about what are we talking about and why do we need to talk about this. One thing I must mention is this is not a once-off. We're not just talking about this at COP and then we're running away and going to enjoy our teas and coffees later. But we want to continue this dialogue. We want to have more of the same. We want to have more of the same. This is not a once-off. We're not just talking about this at COP and then we're running away and enjoy our teas and coffees later. Okay, we want to continue this dialogue. There was a delay there, so apologies for that. So I'm going to give over to Kevin Braithwaite from the Network for Global Innovation, just to set the scene very quickly. And then we will move into a space where we will allow Lucy from Cleantech Group to give some background on her experiences with innovation challenges. And then Kevin will also interact with the panel here to see if there are some ideas, some learnings, some future thinking around how we can do this better. And as I said, this is the start. In the future, in the new year, we would like to convene another working group like this so that we can better understand this issue and we can build a better program, for example, for South Africa, where they can deal with big issues, big innovations with corporates for big impact. So Kevin, if you can hear me.
Sure, I can hear you, Gershwin. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can, I'll just maybe take everybody through some of the slides. Hopefully you can hear me. If you could perhaps just confirm if you can't. Fantastic, you can. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, albeit virtually. The Network for Global Innovation develops programs, accelerators, incubators around the world, supporting cleantech entrepreneurs, and we've been working with our colleagues at UNIDO for a number of years. I've been involved in the program since 2011 when it started in Durban, so we're very pleased to be back at the South African Pavilion this year. So the GCIP Global Cleantech Innovation Challenges, I think, are a really exciting development for GCIP. It really builds upon the work in the countries over the last 9 years, really leveraging the community, the fact that over 1,250 ventures have been supported by GCIP to date. And the idea is, how can we really focus on addressing key global, regional, and national cleantech innovation gaps with the support of institutional partners, with the support of major corporations, and leverage our current network and our expanded network to address some of these big problems. As Gershwin mentioned a moment ago, this is really part of the discussion. We're really trying to start the dialogue today, and this is something that will be launched in its initial form next year and then built upon and expanded in subsequent years. And it's really great that we have this strong foundation now after 8 years, all of these countries involved, and GCIP is growing ever more. Next slide, please. But when we're talking today about designing impactful cleantech innovation challenges, I really wanted to spend a few moments saying why. Why do we care? Why should we care about this? Why aren't we just focused on accelerators and policy? Why are challenges an important development for GCIP? Next slide, please. Well, the key thing is that over time, we've seen numerous examples of where innovation challenges have worked. They've had a major impact in spurring solutions to many difficult, very challenging technological goals. So one of the things that we're focusing the challenges to do is to really spur breakthrough energy and climate solutions, both to help us find these solutions, but also to spur activity and innovation in underserved and unmet areas. Now, we have many examples around the world, particularly in areas above and beyond climate tech, where this has worked. Going way back to 1919, the last century, the Orteg Prize was launched to really foster and spur transatlantic aviation, to the first aviator that would fly nonstop from New York to Paris. A number of different explorers, aviators entered. Many had significant challenges and even died trying to complete this challenge. And it was eventually won by Charles Lindbergh in 1927, but really helped to spur and really accelerate the aviation industry. Now, this particular model was taken up by the Ansari X Prize in 1994 and was focusing how could this approach, this challenge approach, with the idea of a tightly defined challenge, could be used to stimulate innovation in a seemingly challenging environment. In this case, it was to create the first non-governmental organization to launch a reusable crewed spacecraft into space twice within 2 weeks. Big challenge. This particular challenge led to 26 teams entering, and many years later, not many years, but in 10 years later in 2004, the winner, Spaceship One, was awarded the prize. And this was the 47th anniversary of the Sputnik 1 launch on the 4th of October. So the key thing here is we have many examples of where innovation challenges can spur new innovation, can lead to entirely new industries. In the case of the Ansari X Prize, that really helped to catalyze and kickstart the private space, a multi-billion-dollar industry from these initial prizes. So the question that we have is, what moonshots, big and small, can we create to tackle the really pressing energy and climate challenges facing our industries, our communities, and our future? And what role can the GCIP network, the entrepreneurs, the alumni, the partners, etc., play in that? Next slide, please. Another key thing that we've seen is the need to scale up market adoption. So as I mentioned, GCIP has now supported over 1,250 companies over the past 8 years. And what we've found, I mean, this is a generalization, but it typically takes 5 to 8 years for our alumni to really grow and really hit some high levels of commercialization and to scale substantially. We need to find a way to speed this up. We need to find a way to accelerate the very best solutions and help them increase their adoption and create their partnerships. We've seen, for example, that many of our alumni that have really grown significantly, it's been through partnerships with major corporations. Free the Seed, the GCIP Malaysia from 2014, who I'm pleased will be at the launch event on Thursday, has partnered with some of the largest consumer products and retail companies in the world to displace plastic packaging and instead use biodegradable solutions from rice straw waste that would otherwise be burnt. And corporate partnerships have played a key role in helping them to scale substantially. So what can we really do around the innovation challenges to weave in partnerships with major corporations and organizations to reduce the time and friction for our entrepreneurs to speed up the path to commercialization, piloting, adoption, and impact? Next slide, please. Now, as we've mentioned, GCIP is currently in 15 countries. The network is growing. And how can we use these innovation challenges to really increasingly connect innovations, talent, and opportunities across borders? And I'm very excited that with the Global Cleantech Innovation Challenges, we're focusing not just on the 15 GCIP countries, but we're looking truly around the world. How can we leverage solutions from, for example, from South Africa, combine it with expertise in the US, with perhaps business expertise in Sweden, partnerships from the EU, and funding from Singapore. So we're really going to be leveraging expertise, innovations, technologies from around the world to address key energy and climate challenges facing emerging and developing economies. And I think that opportunity to create this truly global platform to make an impact in emerging and developing economies is really exciting. And we very much look forward to your ideas, your lessons, your insights on this. Next slide. So that really brings to a close my very brief framing. I would just like to say a big hello to both everybody in COP27 at the venue, but also to our numerous GCIP entrepreneurs, alumni, and mentors who have joined us online as well. Thank you, Gershwin.
Thank you, Kevin. And I think that really sums up why we were having the conversation, and we'll have the ongoing conversation. Perhaps now just quickly to go across to Kevin, would you like to fall directly into the questions, because everybody's sort of sitting here wondering when is going to be my opportunity to add my valuable insight. So
absolutely, let's go straight into the questions. I mean, we're very much hoping to really have this a lively dialogue. So
yeah, so go ahead.
Fantastic. So I think what I would like to do is maybe initially go to our colleague Lucy Chatburn from the Cleantech Group. So I'm sure all of you will be very familiar with the Cleantech Group. You either will have attended one of their events or read one of their research reports, or you're already using one of their data sources. Now, like my colleagues and I at Engine, Lucy's organization has a lot of experience in running innovation challenges. And Lucy, would appreciate your thoughts to really kick off the discussion on what have you learned in terms of innovation challenges in the clean tech space, what works and what doesn't.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but great that technology allows us to participate from wherever we are in the world. Yes, thank you for the introduction. As Kevin said, at Cleantech Group, we do events, research and consulting focused on innovation for sustainability. We track around 45,000 innovative clean tech startups all over the world. So we have sector analysts who monitor innovation trends as they emerge. And on the consulting team, we work both at ecosystem level, so how to create the conditions for clean tech startups to thrive across country or regional level. And we also work with corporates and industrials to connect them with innovation, so either to grow sustainably or to make their own operations more sustainable, which is where the innovation challenges come in. They're about connecting corporates who have a problem that they want to solve with an innovative startup which could potentially solve that problem. And so when we're designing the challenge, the first thing is to think about high-level objectives. Are we looking at energy? Do we want to reduce our energy consumption, our water consumption? Do we want to produce less waste? And then examine the processes and formulate that into a problem statement or an articulation of challenge, which describes the problem and leaves it open to attract the solutions we're looking for. And there's two things here. First of all, this problem has to be, I think, specific enough so that the right startup can say, okay, yes, my solution can solve that problem. But also we need to leave it broad enough to leave it open to unexpected solutions, because that's what innovation is about. Innovation is surprising, and it can bring us solutions that we've not thought about. So we need to craft the initial challenge statement at the right level. And then the second thing is, how do we attract the innovators to apply to the challenge? How do we get them interested? Because quite rightly, these innovation challenges are gaining in popularity. There's a lot of them around these days. And at Cleantech Group, we have noticed a little bit of fatigue among the startups that you know, they're inundated with challenges that may not be relevant to them, and they don't know how to choose which ones are suitable, and they're always, you know, trying to grow fast. They're strained for resources, so they don't necessarily have the resources to apply to every single challenge that comes along. So then the first thing is to make sure that there is actually a viable funded pilot project, which makes it an attractive proposition. And the second is to make sure we're approaching the right startups who are actually a good fit for this solution. And that will ensure that those startups are actually interested to participate.
Thanks, Lucy. I think it was interesting you pointed out the innovation challenge fatigue that that some entrepreneurs may face. I wonder if you could maybe expand on that a little bit more in terms of what could we do to try and ensure that we don't add to that sense of fatigue, how we ensure that we add to the landscape of innovation challenges and focus on the gaps.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to relevance and maybe looking at examining the processes very carefully and thinking, which are the challenges? Have we got a challenge that hasn't been solved yet? Are we really prepared to engage with a truly innovative solution? Because there are two choices you can make here. The technology readiness level of the solution you're willing to engage with is important. Are we looking for a solution which has been proven maybe elsewhere but hasn't been applied yet in our country? Or are we willing to look at a solution which is on the point of commercialization? And this is really valuable for an emerging startup with a new solution, because that first commercial project is always the hardest to get. So if we're willing to engage at that point, that's really valuable for the startup. And it's also valuable for your company because you know, you get access to a really truly innovative solution. However, it's also more risky. So are we willing to, you know, be bold and take that step and engage with the startup at that level of, you know, technology development?
Thanks, thanks, Lucy. We'd like to maybe come back to you a little bit later in this session and in future sessions as well. But thanks very much for your insights on this. I'd like to maybe introduce next and ask for comments from our colleague at the Technology Innovation Agency, Sanisha Moonsamy. Now, Sanisha, amongst many other things, leads the GCIP program in South Africa. And Sanisha, would really appreciate your thoughts and your insights on how can technology challenges, how can entrepreneurs, how can this combination of entrepreneurs with innovative solutions, with corporations that could provide maybe market access, help to address some big energy and climate issues in South Africa? I wonder if you'd mind to really giving your comments and your thoughts on this, please.
Can you hear me now? Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Sanisha.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the question. I think from my side, if you look at the energy crisis that we have in South Africa, it could only lead to us having serious impacts and assist us to realize what are some of those disruptive solutions that could be forthcoming in terms of renewable energy solutions. I think, like the President mentioned, we want to put moving from coal to hydrogen, for example. So if you look at the entire ecosystem, from working with corporate South Africa, with working with academia, and working with people on the ground, if we all came together and looked at what are some of the key solutions that could come out, as a country, we would then be able to either adopt innovations from other countries, it could be inbound technologies, or we could also look at what are some of the solutions that our innovators have developed. And that goes without being saying. There's a number of them in this Global Cleantech Innovation Program that have come up with solutions that are demand-led. For example, there's energy efficiency solutions. Sandis, who are sitting here with us, have come up with a solution. So for me, it is about strengthening the ecosystem, but with our local and global partners and with corporate South Africa coming on board, looking at the demand side in terms of how they could support us with their supply development programs or the enterprise development programs. So I think for us, that is a key initiative where we look at this particular challenge that would address the needs of our country with global and local expertise coming on board to assist.
Thanks, Tanisha. And I'd like to maybe bring in, I think that point that you mentioned around the role of the corporate sector in South Africa in helping to support and really accelerate these challenges. I'd like to maybe bring in Shamilia Sobrami, and apologies if I did a very bad job of pronouncing your name, but who's the Chief Sustainability Officer for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And Shamilia, I'd be really grateful of your thoughts around how important is sustainability to the corporate sector in South Africa. How important is it to your organization? And is there a way that we can tap into this growing focus to support these innovation challenges, these innovators that we're looking to accelerate and support?
Thank you, Kevin. In relation to the way sustainability is growing and the interest is growing with the corporate sectors, we're certainly finding that there's a huge movement from a focus that was perhaps typically more on disclosure and a risk management approach, often being convoluted with CSI, corporate social investment, towards actually seeing, well, there's a future that we need to go to. So being more aligned with strategy and strategic intent of the business and saying, well, there's a direction we need to go in now. A business model needs to change, how that business model is conceived and what impact it ultimately has on the environment.
Sorry, Lucy, can you hear anything? I can't.
I can't hear anything either.
So
The
I think the connection's gone down.
Thank you, Shamilia. Kevin, are you able to hear now?
We can, a little bit of distortion, but I think what I would perhaps ask maybe Gershwin, if you could maybe help between the two of us, we could perhaps moderate, because sometimes we're losing audio a little bit. So
We are also trying to fix a technical problem, Kevin, so just give us a moment.
So thank you for that response. Unfortunately, we missed a small part of it because of the audio breaking up, but we do appreciate everybody's insights. What I'd be keen to do now is to really continue this focus on South Africa and go to the two entrepreneurs who are with us, Chris and Sandwisawa, and really hear from them about how has their journey been in terms of developing their ventures, and how do they think that perhaps a focused innovation challenge with the involvement of corporate partners could in the future help them, or could have helped them if this had been available earlier. Just trying to get a sense of what type of support would you like to have seen when it comes to accelerating, piloting corporate partnerships moving forward, because that's one of the outcomes we want to have from these innovation challenges.
Thank you, everyone. You know, for me, when we started as a company in the innovation space, really we needed that strategic partner, that person who believes in your idea, that person who's willing to walk the journey with you. And the innovation challenges, they give you that platform. But what I felt was missing in terms of the journey is where the corporate comes in. And I really like what my colleague next to me from JSE said, because the CSRs of corporates and their corporate social responsibility is the platform that we need to give us market access. Because it's well and good to have an innovation, to have funders, but if you don't have the route to market, which is where the role of the corporates comes in terms of assisting innovators to be sustainable in the long run, not to be dependent on grant or challenges, but to give them that runway, because like an aeroplane, you need those wings, you need the energy behind you to keep you soaring and flying above. And for us to scale up as innovators, you need the strategic partners from corporates, from funders, from government to create that enabling environment for us to thrive, because then that will allow us to focus on innovation, to focus on manufacturing, knowing that the aspect of the market, you've got a strategic partner that knows the distribution channel, that understand what the market wants, that understand what are the consumer challenges. Then we become a strategic partner, not just as someone who comes up with an idea and then we throw it to the market, but have the strategic partners who are in the market space, giving you that platform to continue to innovate, to continue to respond to the customer needs. Because then if it becomes a strategic partnership, you know that the market already knows what is required out there. What you do as an innovator is to respond and be relevant to the market challenges. So for me, honestly, that's been the biggest challenge we had. And I'm happy when we see the change and how the corporates are slowly responding in terms of sustainability, in terms of coming on board and say, let's engage, let's become strategic partners, not just about the product in the market selling, but how do we walk this journey together as partners? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chris from Inseco. And I think just to lead on from what you were saying, probably, the next hurdle that we need is we need more money. That's going to be what's going to get us to the next hurdle. But I think that, I've recently joined Inseco after it's gone through its first innovative stage. And I kind of joined them more with a sales and marketing background. And I think that, really started to see where the opportunity was, that it was becoming more of a phase that we needed to fire and then aim. So it was a process of ready, aim, fire. And Simon, the founder of Inseco, was able to get the business to a certain point. But it's certainly now got to a situation where we got to get, wheels, boots on the ground. And I use that analogy of ready, fire, and aim. It is all about sales. And in saying that as well, and Gershwin, we were talking about this prior to us coming on board. I think a lot of the time it would make sense to maybe engage with corporates ahead of time so that products that we are developing are what they want. I think the problem is so many people have a great idea and they go off and they tinker it around with it, they develop it, and then they take it to the market. It's disruptive, But I think I've been around long enough to know that when you talk about disruption, you have to do it in a beautiful way. You've got to do it in a way that people will accept it. Otherwise, it's just lost. We are living in times which require us to think differently and out the box. You know, we've had some incredible successes. You were talking about partnerships, Kevin. You know, we've been working in the aquaculture space, and we've been developing a feed for fish, and with tilapia especially. And just a small case study, tilapia are a freshwater fish, and typically they take 12 months to grow to their full size before you farm them. We've started adding our insect feed into that tilapia fish feed. We're growing those tilapia to full size in 6 months. When you talk about innovation, that is incredible. 6 months, half the time. The residency of the fish is reduced, less CO2 emissions, everything that COP is, you know, striving to do. And so I think that, you know, for us, it's engaging with corporates, and I think that's the way forward now. And, you know, what I want to speak about with my colleagues and with other members of the organizations is that corporates are the ones that really can give us the answers of where we've got to go in the future. So it's money first, we're looking for money, and secondly, it's the engagement with corporates.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate your inputs. I will be coming back to you again in a moment. I'm very pleased that also joining us, we have from the Swedish Energy Agency, Verena Adamheit. And apologies, Verena, if I mispronounced your name. I even mispronounced my wife's name. So it's really something I do to everybody. But we know, and I know from my own personal experience, that Sweden as an economy, the Swedish Energy Agency, the whole sort of ecosystem is very entrepreneur focused. I wonder if you'd mind really telling us a little bit about the lessons that your agency has learned in terms of fostering innovative solutions from entrepreneurs, running competitions and challenges. And I wonder what lessons you've learned that we could apply to the work that we're trying to do globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me and comparing me to your wife, apparently. The Swedish Energy Agency is a government agency with the assignment and the vision to lead society's transformation towards energy transition. So it's a very broad assignment, and we provide expert knowledges, we disseminate information. We are the largest public financier of clean tech in Sweden, which makes us a very strong voice in Sweden. And we of course work also with business development and investment promotion. And I really like the thing that you said, Kevin, and also Lucy at the beginning, because the relations of corporates and the SMEs and the startups is of course very, very essential. And first of all, they need to know about each other. They know that each other part exists, that they are innovative products and solutions that can contribute. So that's the first thing. And Kevin, you mentioned incubation, which is of course the very, very effective way for a soft landing also into new markets. And the other example would be if a corporate wins contracts and then establishing new supply chains for exactly this soft landing. But Kevin, you were asking for lessons learned, and I felt that you kind of mentioned it already, but I want to spell it out, because that what we want to do is play all the strings of the innovation ecosystem. It's not the bilateral relation of the corporate and the startup, but it's the whole ecosystem that needs to work together. And this is government, which I represent, this is the business, this is academia, and also society. And only if all these four parts in this quadruple helix, as we call it, work together, then change can happen. So I think this is the most important learning that we can give.
Thank you. Doreen. I wonder if you'd mind maybe expanding a little bit and talking about the work that your agency does in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, innovators, ventures. What is the spectrum at which you will support or facilitate innovators? Because I understand it's pretty broad. It's a lot broader than perhaps comparable agencies in other countries. So I wonder if we could perhaps learn a little bit more from your experience there.
Yes, of course, and I understand that we are kind of an unusual government agency because we have such a broad assignment. And I think the strength of our agency is that we promote companies all along the innovation chain, from basic finance research, basic research to verification with the customer, pilots and demonstration. So from basic research to commercialization and internationalization. We work with the different focus markets, and I saw Indonesia on your screen. Indonesia is one of our focus markets, and we work with India very much. We work with Germany, we work with the US. So we have different focus areas we focus on very much, and then we work with different platforms promoting technologies which we truly believe in and which Sweden is very strong in, and this is smart cities, where we had a major challenge, by the way, with smart cities. And we work with bioenergy, with batteries, with sustainable heating and cooling. These are the areas we very much focus on.
Thank you. Thanks very, very much for that. I'd just maybe like to also remind our audience, both in person, physically, and those online, that I believe we will have some time for questions at the end. So please do keep your questions prepared. I'd like to maybe go back to our colleague Sanisha from the Technology Innovation Agency. Now, Sanisha, in the same way that South Africa was really the first country in the sort of GCIP family, wouldn't it be good if South Africa was maybe the first country to host an innovation challenge? I realize I'm perhaps putting you on the spot here a little bit, but what could we do to make this happen? What are some of the things we could do? I mean, you're very good at making the impossible happen. So what could we do? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the partnerships we could think about? And what could we have done maybe by the end of this week?
Thanks for the question, Kevin. So I think that's very, very key. It's fine. Can you hear me now, Kevin?
We can, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think that'll be awesome. I mean, if you just look across the GCIP participating countries, and if you came up with a thematic area, for example, around clean energy and focusing on a particular sector, and you bring the corporates on board in terms of international partners and global partners to put their hand up, and then across the countries, you have X amount of alumni that have already been through your program. I think it will be quite a brilliant innovation challenge to see the uptake of us having a thematic challenge, inviting all of the corporate international partners that would come on board, as well as all of the entrepreneurs and innovators across those participating countries to come into one global competition. And then you work across those countries that are developing similar solutions to work together for soft landing opportunities. So in other words, you won't have a team in South Africa coming up with a solution, but rather you'll have a global solution across a number of participating countries. And I think that goes back to Sweden's model of soft landing, within that innovation or solution could be deployed and readily available across a number of countries.
Thank you, Sanisha. Maybe I'd like to pick up on maybe your point about building global teams or global collaborations. I mean, I think we've already seen, for example, in the accelerator in South Africa, we have entrepreneurs from across the country, but we have mentors from Brazil and many other countries, not just South Africa. And I think if we could maybe take this concept one step further, the idea of the innovation challenges, breaking down the boundaries and helping to really spur this collaboration, these global teams, is very exciting. Now, Lucy, the Cleantech Group does a fantastic job of tracking thousands and thousands of cleantech ventures around the world. I wonder if you'd mind commenting, do you see this growing sort of collaboration across boundaries? Do you think the fact that we could potentially see with these challenges a mechanism by which early stage ventures or even slightly later stage ventures could collaborate? Is that a trend that we're seeing already?
Absolutely, it is. And when we, when we help corporates run challenges, we do source the innovation globally. I really liked Chris's comment about acceptable disruption, and it's also a kind of a question of understanding what the market's ready for. I wanted to give you an example. We work with Swire Pacific in Hong Kong, and we're currently working with them on a challenge about tracking post-consumer plastic waste, so specifically plastic drinks bottles, with the overall aim of objective of getting more of that into recycling. So one of the things we found is that Hong Kong has a large informal waste collection sector. So if you look at solutions that are being adopted in the EU, they might be based on individual bottle tagging, reverse vending machines, electronic payments. Those don't work so well in a scenario where you've got a small recycling collection point. Maybe it's collecting bottles by the bag. They may or may not have a label. They're used to dealing with cash payments. So it's about sourcing the solution which is applicable to that market situation, applicable to your market. The other thing to keep in mind when you're sourcing internationally is how is this innovator going to operate in your country? We saw a lot of projects put on hold due to travel restrictions during COVID. So what's the plan? Are they going to hire locally, or are they planning to travel? Do they need to import equipment, or are they going to construct on site? So these are other considerations, you know, when you're planning these international corporations. Doesn't mean they're impossible, but they need some thinking, right?
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks for that. I'd like to maybe go back to maybe some of our colleagues physically in the pavilion and ask maybe Shamilia from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I wonder if you'd mind commenting. I mean, if we're looking to have an innovation challenge focusing on South Africa, I wonder, Shamilia, if you would mind commenting, what advice do you have for the best way that we can engage the corporate sector in South Africa? What are some of the most pressing challenges do you see the corporate sector coming behind, supporting? And do you think there's the potential to bring multiple corporations together to focus on a particular sector or theme? We'd appreciate your thoughts on that.
Kevin, I think the ability to bring people together, or the necessity, should I say, is going to be absolutely critical. If we look at what's happening currently, many companies are obviously doing their bits, often in their little silo. And sometimes those silos are not so little, right? Because we know there are certain companies whose, market cap could even exceed other countries' GDPs. But the need to come together to make those solutions work for everybody is going to be critical. We're sitting here at COP today, where what we're really looking at globally is how do we work together to solve for the climate crisis. So it's clear that it's not going to be working if we have individuals just doing their own bit. The need for collaborative effort is going to be critical. Within business, that's obviously a challenge because often there are issues around competition and or even, antitrust kind of laws and those kinds of things. So where is going to be the space for business to work together, for example, to advance what is needed to effect the solutions we need for climate change within those constraints? And how do we work around that? So firstly, I think there's an opportunity for innovation just on finding how collaboration could work effectively for the benefit of all of us. And then, of course, to drill down, if you look at the climate challenge and what we have now, it's absolutely opportune. So the principle that the president mentioned, what we're looking at as a country in South Africa and the key sectors that are going to need to be focused on. And the plan is going to be really to focus on green hydrogen, to look at the energy sector, and then to look at the transportation sector. I think that's our first clue as to possibly where challenges could lie. Now, to unpack that, I mean, those are broad. Any of them are pretty broad, right? would be then the engagement with the private sector, with businesses to say, okay, which elements then is the subtext to that? If you're in an industry that is perhaps energy intensive, what is the particular thing you need to have? And then we craft a challenge that looks to solve an existing problem that then ties back to the national strategy. So Kevin, my background is strategy, in fact, as you might have gathered. And so I have to make sense of the sustainability challenge with a strategic mindset. And so I feel like having that overarching goal that says this is the national plan, and of course we take for granted that that national plan feeds into a global need, right? What we're doing is our responsibility within a global subtext. And so if every industry is pulling their weight along that line of those priority sectors, then we're going to get closer to actually achieving the aims of what we want via the Paris Agreement and sustainable development, and then that reduction. So I would say that would be my approach. What is the national agenda? Those 3 key focus areas could actually help us perhaps with the idea of where the challenges could lie. But then beneath that, the conversation with industries, what specifically is your challenge? And there, I think, will help us set up something that could be hugely meaningful.
Thank you. I'm curious, based on your sort of experience in the field and your work with members of your exchange, do you think this is an area in South Africa where there is a need for these types of challenges? I mean, earlier Lucy mentioned that in some parts of the world, in some sectors, there's almost innovation challenge fatigue. But would you agree that there are opportunities and gaps in South Africa where an innovation challenge could play an important role?
I certainly think so. If we just look at, can you hear?
Yes.
If we look at what the scale of what needs to be achieved, there's absolutely no doubt there's opportunity for innovation challenge. Of course, there's going to be a lot of innovation that happens within sectors anyway, right? And that might be without an explicit effort in terms of an innovation challenge. But there are other areas where the solutions simply don't exist. I mean, even what we're looking at from a decarbonization pathway, in many instances, is premised off future technology and innovation that hasn't happened yet. So that to me gives us a clear clue that there's an opportunity for innovation challenges and creating that and saying, well, we know how we're going to get to point X, maybe the next 5 years. Beyond that, actually, we don't know. And surely starting now to answer what happens after point X is where we need to go. And then leave time for those things to develop, get into the value chain, reach commercialization, have the testing. So I think beginning with that end in mind now is going to be critical, because absolutely the answers are not all there right now. And so finding those spaces to build that up, have a plan, knowing that things take time to mature and get to the right level of commercialization and usability is hopefully a good plan.
Thank you. Well, I think we're almost out of time, but one of the things I would propose is that I think certainly this is something that we want to discuss in more detail in further dialogues. I would like to propose maybe having a future session just focusing on innovation challenges in South Africa and mapping that out with potential partners and participants. That would be very, very helpful. So I would appreciate your support with that. I would like, if it is possible, to maybe take a few questions either from the pavilion or from our online audience, if that is possible. Gershwin, would that be possible to take some questions?
It's certainly a possibility to take a question from the audience here. So we'll just pass the mic to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Amin Khan. I'm from Kenya. I'm in the Kenya Climate Change Working Group, civil society, but I'm also very interested in entrepreneurship and business, especially towards climate smart agriculture. And I was very happy when you spoke about fish, tilapia fish. Once, I think it's to do with food and innovation, making the feed. South Africa is far ahead in many other African countries, including Kenya, especially when it comes to hydroponics, aquaponics, which are very innovative. And I think what I find as a big challenge is how can we bring these technologies to other parts of Africa? Because when you buy systems from South Africa, they're very expensive to come. The South Africans, manufacturers, of course, don't want to share their ideas. And I think that is one way in which we can make it more innovative for others in Africa. And I would really love to partner with anybody who's can help us in that context, because Kenya is really growing very fast. We have drought problems in the northern areas, no water, and yet hydroponics for fodder would be a key solution. And I'm looking forward to South Africa playing a better role for us all in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. This is Alois. My question is really about how do we get over the inertia that comes with incumbency? That we have a lot of big companies that are in the market. How do we define this relationship and collaborative between these big companies and startups so that it can be mutually beneficial, but it also can be transformational? Because let's face it, some of these innovations are going to be eating into the market of these big companies. And it is in the natural order of things that some of these big companies may actually resist any form of partnership that pushes them into this space. So what kind of collaboratives or partnerships that we can develop with the view to ensure that the big companies or those are in the market can actually see startups as potential opportunities for them to innovate, but also to be ahead of the competition. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have any responses to either of the statements and questions?
Well, I do have some thoughts, but I think I would like to perhaps defer to our esteemed participants. So perhaps going to the last question from Alois. Verena, I wonder if you mind me putting you on the spot and just asking in Sweden, how have you managed this in terms of how have you sort of fostered collaboration? You're obviously a government entity, but Sweden, I think, has a very good way of facilitating collaboration in this space. How have you made this work?
Yeah, you speak about out of my heart about collaboration, because it's all about engaging people. And I guess one of the keys that we need to be working on is to bridge the gap between the business cultures, between the people, the misunderstanding, the lack of knowledge about the corporate world, about the startup world, about different processes, structures, paces, because there are differences, you might correct me, but there are differences between startups and corporates. And if we create fora or arenas to make them meet to discuss what the potential critical issues could be, I think we'll really make progress.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I think we have maybe
Sandiswa also has.
Can I just to add on to the back of that, and I think what is so important is that form of dialogue, and I think it is the engagement with corporate. A lot of corporates are seen as, in that term, as Titanics, ships that are just sailing in one direction and can't steer left or right. But I think if one can begin with the end in mind and have some upfront dialogue with those corporates and asking them what they need, and that you are then able to maybe add a solution to that, I think that'll go a long way in enabling that kind of product fruition.
Sandiswa also has.
Just to add on what Chris says, for me, again, building on my own personal experience, in most cases, what we bring as startup, as innovators, complements what the big corporates are all about. And through your enterprise development program, through your supply chain programs, I see that's the platform where we can collaborate. And as mentioned, the corporates, they give us that runway we need as startups because they understand the market. They've already been there. They know what the customer wants, but is to find that relationship in terms of saying, we are your partner, not just as someone who takes your product and sell to the market and we try to squeeze you, but we are in this thing together to win it. And Shamila spoke about strategy, because corporates, they have to be strategic about it and decide and be committed that we want to work with you, because when you are in innovation, there are cost implications. And to expect a new a startup company with an innovative product to compete on price, you still have a lot of issues, especially if you are in manufacturing, that we have to compete on. So when a corporate takes that strategic position to say, you know what, we're gonna work this journey with you, because again, similar to what my colleague from Sweden has said, we come from two different backgrounds. They're about compliance, they're about certification, they're about all sorts of things. And we need that big brother to hold our hand to say, you know what, we're gonna get there together, because to expect that product to just be compliant overnight, it's not gonna happen. I've got a product, I've been trying to collaborate with manufacturers for years, so for us to become a component manufacturer. But if they're asking me for certification, it means they have to change something in their own model to also adopt my innovation. So it needs to be a strategic relationship, a win-win solution. I help you to reach new markets, but at the same time, you give me a platform to grow.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to hog the, but I just thought of an amazing example that's happening right now in South Africa. We have a fish company called I&J, and those people from South Africa will know the brand very well. It was started in 1910. It's 110 years old. 110 years, yeah, 112 years old. Anyway, I recently approached them and visited their abalone farm. They have the biggest abalone farm in the world. It's a company that's been around for 110 years, and approached them with a novel idea of developing a new feed for their abalone. Company that's 110 years old. Can you imagine the resources that they have? But as a startup, we are able to plant a seed. And as we speak right now, we are busy developing a very unique way of feeding the abalone through the use of insect protein. So, you know, that comes with upfront dialogue with the corporate, asking them what they want, and then us coming back with a solution. That's very key.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe one last point from Sanisha, and maybe you can address the gentleman's question about collaborations between South Africa and Kenya, for example.
Thank you so much. I think just to add to that, Elias mentioned transformation, and I think in our country, transformation really speaks for itself in terms of new young startups coming on board, more female-driven and more youth. And through that journey, we've realized that if we're focusing on climate change, definitely by collaborating with the corporates and looking at what some of these energy efficient solutions does. I've seen that in the GCIP program, a number of them have. By coming up with these innovative solutions, the corporates will be able to claim back their carbon credits. And I think as we move towards understanding the sustainability and impact around carbon credits, the corporates that are currently doing what they're doing, and if you look at the startups that come on board, it is really a marriage. It really is a match in terms of addressing the need in terms of climate change. So for me, that's critical. I think in terms of the question at the back, in terms of collaboration, in terms of South Africa and Kenya, we're working very closely together in terms of innovative solutions that impact both South Africa and Kenya. So we do have a soft landing program opportunity that we definitely can speak about, in particular areas like hydroponics, agri-tech, and the biotech economy. So we definitely do have the relationship that has started and it's continuing as we speak. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Gershwin.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's about time for me to wrap up here. So thank you to Kevin and Lucy and the panel here. Thank you for your time. I think the last point is really well made by Sanisha, is in that one of the key things we're trying to drive home through this program, GCIP, remember the name, is that we are trying to build collaborative efforts, trying to strengthen the relationships across borders, strengthen cross-border ecosystems. One of our key principles in the program is about ecosystems, not only nationally, but globally. So these kinds of relationships we're talking about between Kenya and South Africa, between Sweden and the global south, so to speak, between corporates and innovators, is all about ecosystem strengthening and this dialogue about what is the need and how can we satisfy the need in order to do what we are trying to do here at COP, is to make big strides, right? Not just the little incremental steps, big strides. And this is the question about challenges. Do challenges bring the big strides we want to see? And so this is the energy we want to see from our collaborative work here and the dialogue we we are encouraging now. So again, I want to say this is not the last time we'll be talking, because we need to build this conversation. We need to come up with a good framework to make a lasting impression in this challenge space, so that it works for corporate, so that it works for innovators, so that it works for countries in terms of global targets for climate change and climate action. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for your participation. And please note that we are going to send around to you an invitation to sign up, so that we can get back to you to join the conversation again. We're not leaving you. You came to sit here, so you can't leave anymore. We got you now. So we're going to continue this conversation. Thank you to Kevin and Lucy from afar. Kevin from Miami. Lucy, are you still in Italy? So thank you to everybody, and have a great day. Thank you on behalf of UNIDO, and thank you to NBI and the Department of Forestries and Fisheries and Environment of South Africa for hosting us here today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.